Hi guys, welcome back. Welcome to the FSX404 channel. Today we're going to go over the number 8 most extreme airport according to the History Channel's TV series. The number 8 most extreme airport is the Eagle County Regional Airport, KEGE. The Eagle Airport made number 8 on the list because the airport is a high altitude airport located at an altitude of over 6,500 feet in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Another thing that makes the airports located in the high mountains dangerous is the weather. So not only that we have the thin air to deal with, which makes our ground speed and approaches a lot faster, but the weather itself can change very fast. And the weather in the mountains is usually high winds, high turbulence, wind shear, amongst other things that can make the approach into an airport like this very hard. We'll go over some high altitude and high turbulence precautions during the flight part of the video, but for now we'll just concentrate on the approach plate briefing. So the approach we're going to do today is the GPS runway 25 approach. The first thing, as usual, we'll take a look at the name of the approach. The approach is called RNAV GPS-D. So the instrument we're going to need for this approach is the GPS, obviously. The second thing we're going to look at is the IAF, or the initial approach fix. This is the point where the full RNAV GPS-D approach will begin. And in this case, we actually have two IAFs. One is northeast of the airport, a point called Kimball, and the other one, a point called Fiddle, is east-southeast of the airport. You can use either point to begin your approach, and the point you choose will obviously depend on where you're coming from. One thing to remember about this approach is that from the point Powers, the approach into Eagle Airport will be the same for both IAFs. We will come into Powers from two different directions, but the approach into Eagle Airport from the point Powers will be the same for both approaches. First, we're going to look at the point Fiddle, and if we look at point Fiddle as our IAF, we're going to be at 13,300 feet at this point Fiddle. From Point Fiddle, we'll fly at 13,300 feet on a heading of 299 to a point called Fogup. At Point Fogup, we'll begin a descent to 12,000 feet on a heading of 299. We should reach the Point Powers at 12,000 feet. For our IAF Kimball, we should reach the IAF Kimball at 14,000 feet. After overflying the IAF Kimball, we'll fly a heading of 184 to the Point Powers. At the same time we overfly the Kimball, we'll begin a descent from 14,000 feet to 12,000 feet. Once we reach 12,000 feet, we'll maintain 12,000 feet until we reach the Point Powers. So from both IAFs, we'll reach the Point Powers at 12,000 feet. From Point Powers, we'll fly a heading of 237 until we reach the Point AWAC. From Point AWAC, we'll fly a heading of 247 until we either pick up the runway visually and land, or we do a missed approach. Now let's talk a little bit about descent we need to do using a GPS approach. A GPS approach is a non-precision approach, meaning that there is no glide slope. That means that we're not going to do one smooth descent down onto the runway. We're going to do a step down descent. If we look at the profile, from Point Powers, we'll immediately descend down from 12,000 feet to 11,100 feet. We'll maintain 11,100 feet until we reach the Point AWAC. AWAC is the final approach fix. This is where we put our landing gear down, and this is where we do our pre-landing checklist. Upon reaching AWAC, we have to adjust our heading to a heading of 247 and then begin a descent from 11,100 feet down to 9,860 feet. We'll maintain 9,860 feet until we reach the point, which is 3 miles away from the Point Nepri. Once we pass the point that is 3 miles from the Point Nepri, we can descend down to 8,900 feet, but no lower. Our minimum descent altitude is 8,900 feet for this approach. Under no circumstances can we descend below 8,900 feet unless we have the runway or the runway lights in sight. If we're at 8,900 feet and over the Point Nepri and we don't see the runway or the runway lights in sight, we're going to do a missed approach. Real quick, the missed approach is very simple. Climb to 14,500 feet on a heading of 247 until we reach the Point Zotzi. Then from the Point Zotzi, we'll fly a heading of 006 for 25.6 miles until we reach a point called Jesse, and then we'll hold at Jesse. But before we jump headfirst into this approach, let's look at the approach a little more carefully. First of all, the minimum descent altitude for this approach is 8,900 feet, which is 2,365 feet above ground level. If we reach the Point Nepri and we are still at 8,900 feet, that gives us a half a mile to descend down more than 2,300 feet. And there's no way we can descend down 2,300 feet in a half a mile in any airliner without losing control and crashing it. So we really have to go back to the point that is 3 miles from Point Nepri. Here we can be as low as 9,860 feet. At this point, we are about 3,200 feet above the airport. So at 3.5 miles from the runway, we are over 3,200 feet above the runway. Let me just put this into a perspective real quick. At a ground speed of 150 to 160 knots, we will fly that 3.5 miles distance in about a minute and a half. That means that we have to descend down 3,200 feet in a minute and a half. Our rate of descent will have to be from 2,500 to 3,000 feet per minute to even be able to put the airplane in a proper position to do a proper landing. This is done for a reason. This is why this approach is so hard. So just by looking at the approach plate, we know that these minimums that the approach plate is giving us will not be enough to land the airplane. This is a safety margin. So what is going to happen is, from the point AWAC, from our final approach fix, we're going to start looking for that runway or the runway lights like crazy. As soon as we see the runway and the runway lights, we need to switch to visual and start a visual rapid descent. When this approach plate was made, the intention was that the pilots pick up the runway visually very fast as they can. That way they can descend down as fast as they can and pick up those PAPI lights and then use those PAPI lights to guide them onto the runway. So one of the advices I would have for this approach is that if we are at 3 miles from the point Nepri and at an altitude of 9,860 feet like we should, and we don't see the runway at that point, we should probably start getting ready for a missed approach. Now let's get into the flight part of this approach. We're going to use the IAF Kimball, the Northeast IAF, and we're going to be coming from the Kremlin VOR at an altitude of 14,000 feet on a heading of 199. The airplane we're going to use for this approach today is going to be the Wilco Embraer ERJ-145LR airplane. So let's set it up and let's go fly the approach.